All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Plenary number 5, where we will be talking about partnerships for inclusive transformation and sustainability of nonprofits. I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but we have indeed reached our final plenary for our conference today. Diving into the topic of partnerships for inclusive transformation and sustainability for nonprofits, I'd like to welcome you to the stage, Dr. Ahmad Faisal, President of Mercy Malaysia, as our keynote speaker, followed by a panel discussion in which he will be joined by Dato Alia Karin, founder of Akrab Resources and Yayasan Health on Wealth, as well as Dr. Kamarul Azahari Raza, Director of the Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Center. Ladies and gentlemen, the last plenary session today will be moderated by Puan Alia Iman Roslan, the Officer of Project Monitoring and Reporting Unit of Mercy Malaysia. Puan Alia, anytime you're ready, passing the last baton to you right now.
Good afternoon and welcome to Plenary Session 5. As you know, titled Partnerships for Inclusive Transformation and Sustainability of Nonprofits. My name is Alia Iman from Mercy Malaysia, and I will be the moderator for this session. So as you may already come to know, the theme for IDEP 2021 is Building Forward Together, Ending Persistent Poverty, Respecting All People and Our Planet. A highly ambitious yet necessary goal moving forward with the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and to prepare and mitigate for the challenges plaguing the 21st century landscape. Partnerships are, as emphasized by the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 17, are vital in advancing societal, developmental, economical, and environmental objectives. So fellow attendees, we have 3 eminent speakers here today, as Ms. Radha has shared, to share their views and experience on this topic. So I'd like to remind everyone, we have some polls up on the right-hand side of your screen. So as you listen to these presentations, please try to answer the polls as well. So without further delay, I would like to welcome Professor Dato Dr. Faisal Firdaus, President of Mercy Malaysia, to present the keynote address. Dato Faisal, the floor is yours.
I hope everyone, is that all right? I hope it is. Right. Well, it's a big topic. It's indicating poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to waste time. Let's dive straight into it as we have a very short time this afternoon. So, poverty and its eradication. But what does transformation of non-profits have to do with it? Well, I say almost everything. Poverty and poverty eradication are essential in this day and age if the world, not just Malaysia, not just our society, is to survive. It's like the one we just had, or we are still going through, the COVID-19 pandemic. Partnerships and inclusive partnerships especially will not only help sustain the efforts to eradicate poverty, but also help sustain organizations like non-profits who are working towards achieving poverty eradication. And more so, if we're talking about sustainability in both the context of eradication of poverty, as well as sustainations, including non-profits who are working towards this aim. And last but not least, of course, is the all-important question of the sustainability of the efficacy of delivery of our program, our projects, to vulnerable communities everywhere. Why is it so crucial, ladies and gentlemen? Because eradicating poverty is crucial in ensuring sustainable and equitable development for all. And it's also important, especially in a country like Malaysia, in ensuring socio-economic and socio-political stability and harmony. We cannot deny that the COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare some of the flaws of our society and some of the major structural flaws of our economy. It took just a single virus that has the ability to infect people at very high transmissibility to actually lay all these flaws for all of us to see, continue to develop and prosper at par or above par with the rest of the world, with or without these risks and these hazards coming along. Is it so crucial to and more sustainable development for all? Because the economic cake and activities will continue to grow, and this will enable positive, progressive, upward social mobility, both intra and extra generational. While Malaysia, in the first 50 years of its independence, saw upward social mobility mainly happening extra generational, meaning from one generation to another. The generational upward social mobility is also now needed to build a better and more sustainable and resilient community. And of course, eradication of poverty and the transformation of poverty will also enable us to continue to spur innovations and create more opportunities for everyone. And innovations are not restricted, ladies and gentlemen, to just economic innovation, but also innovations in other fields. The entertainment side of things and the arts, all this will help create a better society. And of course, it's also important, and this comes to the crux of the matter of our discussion, in building a community that has a higher ability to bounce back from adversity, a community that is able to avoid systemic collapse and quickly in crisis, within the crisis, while the crisis is still happening, and also able to generate new livelihood methods, ways, and means. It's crucial, ladies and gentlemen, as the COVID-19 pandemic has just shown us. To do all these of our economy as well as all other structures that hold our society together. So the ability to generate new employment quickly in the face of the loss of present employment, perhaps, yeah. The ability to generate new methods of livelihood for all, not just for a certain segment only, will be crucial in ensuring a more resilient community. Diverse economy, and a more resilient and diverse economy will then be more sustainable, and it will be able to enlarge the economic pie, the economic cake for all. And our economy then will not be too dependent on one of, whether we like it or not. We are very much dependent on, for example, the oil and gas industry and the commodities that are linked with it. We are also very dependent at the moment on a few agricultural commodities, and as a result, or in the aftermath of the pandemic, we've seen how one particular subsector, the glove making industry, for example, has growth been complemented with growth in other areas. That is something that we need to work on. Yeah? And so a more resilient economy, a more sustainable economy will also lead to a more stable yet high worth currency, internally here in Malaysia as well as externally. And there will be more positive utilization of financial and monetary tools because people will be able to utilize them. If you have too big how many tools you have in our banking system, in our investment ecosystem, only those with money will be able to use those tools. Now, if we and make our economy more sustainable and therefore lead to a more impactful outcome for all, we'll be more equitable socially, economically. There will be a better, as well as the built-up environment. There'll be more sustainable economic and development tools. There'll be better infrastructure, both real infrastructure, roads, etc., but also virtual infrastructure will be better. There'll be better services in all sectors, better retirement funds and accessibility to retirement funds like the EPF. There'll be better workplace coverage, like our social security, which can be enhanced. There'll be better health insurance for all. There will be better access to basic rights, to education, healthcare, food, etc., shelter. And there'll be, of course, more space for human rights. Virtues. And we must admit that when a society, when a country is struggling to feed itself, the last thing that will come to the minds of most people will be, human rights, especially the right empathizing with their own selves and their own problems to worry about other people's human rights. But if we manage to create a more equitable society economically, we'll have more space for human rights. And of course, coming along as well, some of the more environmentally friendly technology, the green technology that is already here in the world at this moment, it's not that it's not available, but it's more expensive. We'll need our society to have a better level of income, a better level of financial stability to be able to access this environmentally friendly technology. Now, there are that come into play that can obstruct our aim of eradicating poverty. And I put it to you that eradicating poverty now in 2021 is a lot more difficult than it was perhaps 50, 60 years ago, simply because the world has become more complex, more complicated, and the economy and our society has become more complex. There are so many risks and emerging hazards, ranging from, of course, the biggest one of all, climate change, as has been shown over the last few months. Now, COVID-19, of course, is not the only and will probably not be the last pandemic that we human beings will face in this century at least. And so COVID-19 and other pandemics, and the impact, ecological, environmental disasters, as well as the outbreaks of new future pandemics. We know, for example, that some of the pandemics we've had, the SARS pandemic, the MERS-CoV virus, have all come through zoonotic infections from the animal kingdom to human beings as a result of more exposure to animals which we wouldn't have had before if their environment still. And of course, we have risks and hazards of man-made disasters, be they chemical, biological, or nuclear. Build a 3 Mile Island. And
Dr. Faisal?
of course, latest in Fukushima, a natural disaster. And of course, we have the risk of economic disparity and systems collapse. Lebanon at the moment is in dire straits. Because of apps of the economic system together. Yes.
Dr. Faisal, if you can hear me, your line is extremely choppy.
Okay.
It's towards the end. So if you could quickly sum up, because we're approaching the end, because the content we cannot hear it very well. Yeah. So
and okay, can you? Okay, I don't know whether you can hear me. I'll try.
Yeah, it's just intermittently choppy. Sorry.
And of course, we apologize extremist religiosity, extreme nationalism, as well as uncontrolled and unfocused migration. Now, migration is not necessarily a bad thing. Countries in the world have thrived because of migration into their countries. The United States, Canada are two examples. But we're talking about uncontrolled and unfocused migration that has come out of despair. Like the ones we're seeing crossing the Mediterranean from sub-Saharan Africa, especially. So these phenomena will continue to be risks and hazards for all. And here in Southeast Asia, of course, we have some very pertinent hotspots near our country, control and unfocused migration. And of course, climate change will bring about more food and water security, or issues leading to lack of food and water security, leading to unrest, conflicts, and even further migration.
Dr.
Now,
Faisal,
one major role in eradicating poverty.
Sorry,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, the connection is choppy, but we heard the important points. So I think we should quickly move on to the panelists, but we did hear the end of your points about climate change and towards the eradication of poverty.
And
so
have generally less costs and overhead.
Yes.
And have more altruism and are more focused. And non-profit, because they have had more belief and are more passionate, generally speaking, in what they do and how they do things. They're also closer to the community which they work with, especially vulnerable segments of the community. And that is also context dependent. And non-profits are able to do better sometimes because they're able to socialize and internalize values better. Although non-profits too have their own problems, have their own structure, is the fact that non-profits are usually organizations without governmental authority or the mandate of the people officially. Yeah. Now, however good non-profit, or in fact no one sector, either government or academia or not-for-profit, can do all this alone, either locally, nationally, regionally, or globally. No one entity is and resources and funding is only one part of the equation. Now, I say that because there are non-profits, like some foundations, which are very rich. The Gates Foundation is a good example. But having just the material resources and funding is only one more. They are less tangible, if you like, but as important, if not more important. Issues like accessibility to vulnerable populations and their issues, affinity.
Dr. Faisal, excuse me, Dr.
Of certain
Faisal.
populations.
Sorry, Dr. Faisal's internet is not. Yeah, Dr. Faisal, I'll have to interject. We did catch the
of the legacy of some non-profits is also an important issue, and society has also become more complex and complicated. And usually need a for that.
All right, Dr. Faisal, thank you so much. It's just that the internet right now, it's the audience, they're not hearing the content very well, but not to worry. There will be an edited version of the presentation, and participants can watch that again. So moving swiftly on, please welcome the first panelist for our session today, and her name is Dato' Alia Karen. Dato' Alia is the founder of Resources and Yayasan Health and World. Dato' Alia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia, and Assalamualaikum, and good afternoon, good evening already now. Thank you, everybody. I do have some slides. I noticed that in the chat box, everyone is asking for slides. So I'm quite glad to have prepared some slides that I'm sure the Secretariat will be able to share with you after this. Right. Firstly, my congratulations and thanks to Mercy Malaysia as well as Yayasan Sejahtera for walking the talk in inviting partners to be included in your session today in the IDEP 2021, where it's International Day for Eradication of Poverty. And I will be covering on partnerships for inclusive transformation and sustainability of nonprofits, a topic that is actually very, very close to my heart. So once again, thanks Yayasan Sejahtera and also Mercy Malaysia. Right, can I have my next slide? You've always heard of this common sentence and common phrase that you don't build businesses, you actually build people, and the people will help you to build businesses. Hence, similarly, you don't really build partnerships. You can't, it's not easy to build partnerships. But what you've got to do is you've got to first build relationships. So you build strong, good relationships, powerful relationships. And if you look at that picture there that I placed for under sustainability, you will find that the core is actually from building relationships, right, which actually gives you power. And with that, you actually are able to transform individuals, you're able to transform communities, and together we can transform institutions. Of course, we face the challenges together, but we also harvest the opportunities that are laid down before us when we are stronger and we are able to build relationships, right? And through that, we are very rooted in our values. We are rooted in the fundamentals of, regardless of what organization, which kind of CSO are we talking about, we seem to be very, very rooted in the cause and very, very passionate in the work we do. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. Right. So since the World Bank is on board today, I am going to quote what the World Bank has defined CSO, right? And how the World Bank has defined CSO is basically to say, well, we know CSO is some of us refer to the CSO as the third sector. Well, we know that the CSO refers to a wide array of organizations. Generally, what they have covered is basically all sorts of non-profits, all sorts of civil societies, anything but the government. But I have added on two more to the World Bank's definition, and they are universities and schools. Simply because in the last decade, universities and schools have been invited to participate and be a big part of the civil society organizations. Regardless of what the civil society organizations are out there to do, regardless whether they are for the community or whether they are for the people themselves, internally, externally, even abroad, youth via universities, via colleges, via schools are playing a big role. And I would suggest today that we do not forget them. Instead, we rope them into our conversations to build the future of our community. Basically, I would say CSOs are building the building block of development and the national cohesion. But having said that, I figured out that CSOs, after some soul searching and thinking yesterday, I have come to this conclusion that CSOs actually provide both the immediate relief and also the long-term transformative change that's happening. And while we defend collective interest together, we are also contributing to the increase in accountability and transparency, something that we must continue to do. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. Now, the roles that the CSOs are playing, we play multiple roles. Whether we are a large CSO, we are a small CSO, we are a new CSO, or very, very rooted as part of the plan that we have collectively under any of the agencies or the umbrellas in the country or elsewhere. So we play multiple roles, and we are the source of information that actually bridges between the citizens and the government. We monitor policies. I'm hoping that we can do a better job, and we hold the government accountable. We should have a say. We should be included. We should remain loud and want to be included. CSOs should start stepping up their game, right? As we deliver services, especially to the poor and undeserved, we cannot be seen as always the old-fashioned way of looking at CSOs. In short, we also defend the citizens' right and work for the change, and we uphold the social norms and behaviors. So CSOs are actually doing a lot, and CSOs are contributing playing a major role and contributing a very large amount of effort towards community building. And this is essential as we know what's happening today, and we have seen this in the last 18 months. Next slide, please. The challenges. Now, my understanding of what the civil society is we constantly need to be challenged, and we need to be more fluid. in short, we need to be more agile because times are changing. I got a little bit of what Dr. Faisal was saying just now on being a little bit, how everything is changing so rapidly and so drastically. Now, the challenges we are facing, or rather the CSOs are facing, is it's very orthodox. When we talk about CSOs, people go towards charity, people go towards non-profit, and people have this thinking in their mind. The mindset is that charities are poor. Charities are 5 people would share one desk, and all people work in charities. So the way of thinking is very old-fashioned, or rather orthodox. Hence, charities are not seen as professional organizations. Whose fault is this? We collectively, CSOs collectively, must change the mindset within ourselves, within the board, within the management team. CSOs should step out and stop being professional beggars. At the end of the day, CSOs are not begging money for themselves. CSOs are actually begging money for other people, for a good cause, for the work that they do. It's not even for themselves. So I think the label of professional beggars should be changed, because generally we are contributing to people. These are people that need to live. These are people that need to survive. And we are actually helping people thrive. We are helping to make changes, positive changes, fundamental changes, not just to the community, but to the economy, to the country, to the goodwill, right? And CSOs are never run like businesses. That's something else that I would strongly suggest and encourage CSOs to run their organizations similarly like how you run a business. Obviously, we are not talking about giving out profits, but we are talking about running it like a business professionally, so much so that the surplus is able to help the community that we want to help, the people that we want to help, the people that we are supposed to look after. Whatever the cause that we are fighting for, be it animals, be it the environment, be it green, be it SDGs, anything. And CSOs today, the challenges that we are facing, if I were to add on, is the lack of expertise. This is very, very prominent, whether the organization, whether the social enterprise, or whether the sustainability of non-profits really, really depend on the expertise. Because when you have lack of expertise, what you're going to have is the expertise are not there to bring in the funds. They're not there to run the place like a business. They're not able to run the organization in a very well manner. Thus, funding is affected, thus leading to trust issues or accountability issues. Next slide, please. Now, there are gaps, obviously, that I have identified. COVID-19 is providing us with a crash course. And the role and importance of civil society has been affected. And we learned it the hard way the last 18 months. Beyond the immense pressure that CSOs have been exposed to with the work that they do, and also risking their lives. Mercy Malaysia and many of the other frontliners are affected in this way. So the gaps here, when we talk about the world, CSOs around the world, when we talk about CSOs globally, we find that training is a big thing on the global arena. Unfortunately and sadly in Malaysia, training takes a back seat. Why? Simply because they would say training costs money. But training is essential. Capacity building is essential. It is run on a wild scale. Even in Singapore last week, listed companies were having training on social responsibility, on customer responsibility, and they were also exposed to the fundamentals of non-profits. Now, the gaps that CSOs are also facing is the retention. Obviously, that's an issue, and how do we bridge this gap? How do we fill this gap? When we talk about retention, people don't stay long in non-profits. Why? It's not a very glamorous job. CSOs, when they have employees are not having this glamorous job. People did not even know the existence of many of them until the last 18 months when frontliners was the name on everybody's lips, right? People's expectations. These are the other gaps that we are facing, simply because there are just too many non-profits out there. There are too many non-governmental organizations. We have a large pool of people wanting the same amount of money that's out there. And the last 18 months, everyone is looking for resources, whether it's financial resources or whether it's in any other form of assistance. So one of the things that we can do is have volunteers and have their say. Feedback is good. We ought to continue working through partners. Training, I would re-emphasize and say training is essential, capacity building, retention, and obviously don't forget the people's expectations. Last but not least, we have some advantages that we can work with, right? Especially we have seen this in the last couple of months, the last 18 months, if I may be more specific. Frontliners have become a very popular word. Everybody knows who frontliners are only in the last 18 months. Some didn't even know the word frontliner, right? We specifically called them nurses or doctors and the people who are in medical services. But today, frontliners carry a very, very different meaning, a very large and very big, huge meaning. So the advantage that we have together when we include partnerships is that we can promote solidarity and we can recover even faster from whatever we've done. This is proven the last 18 months with many, many NGOs collaborating and working together. We can continue to support via partnerships, hyperconnect obviously with the social media. If anyone is not on the social media, then I think you are at lost. Simply because everything is today connected with social media and it plays a very significant and important role. One of the other advantages that we have is compared to 30 years ago, today the young are very, very exposed. We start relationship building, we start non-profit, we start all the good things right from secondary school about giving, about paying it forward, about doing social work, about going out there and helping the vulnerable. And I think the companies are at the most vulnerable at this point. The last 1 year, companies have been very, very vulnerable. Although economically they have not been doing well, they have been very vulnerable simply because of the COVID, having this fear in them that they need to contribute back to society, seeing what COVID, the damage that COVID has done, not just to Malaysia, but globally and worldwide.
Thank you so much.
Last slide, please. Yeah, so last but not least, Alia, I'm going to leave everybody with this sentence. I think we should all stop changing the mindset and say, let's stop doing charity. So don't do charity, do humanity. If I could leave you with that sentence to chew on, then that's what I have, Alia. So thank you, Alia, for the session, for having me for the last 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alia, for your insightful and thought-provoking speech. I think it's great that you highlighted the need for dynamicism and CSO action in today's world, especially taking into account this ever-changing situation with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So moving on, let's welcome our second panelist, Dr. Kamarul Azahari. Dr. Kamarul is the director of the Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Center, also known as DPPC, and the Japan International Institute of Technology under University Technology Malaysia. Dr. Kamarul, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alia, for the introduction. Let me begin. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Yayasan Sejahtera, for the invitation. Thank you, UNDP and World Bank Group for inviting me today. It's my great pleasure to be here. And I would like the organizer, yeah, indeed, 8 minutes, don't worry. I will be stop the presentation or sharing session quickly. Let's move to the next one. Well, say today on the themes and title, the COVID-19 crisis is affecting every aspect of our societies, even more the poor people. I think it's very timely to discuss and see. And today, I would like to share some of the lesson learned and perhaps within this short period of time, we can see some of the significant effort. Thank you, Dr. Alia, for inviting or at least acknowledging university as part of your definitions today. And I've seen a lot of effort, significant effort done by various actors, of course, by non-profit, civil society organization, NGOs, particularly adapting this pretty much the concept from Japan. Well, these public helps, mutual help, and self-helps, how it's locally implemented and adopted here in Malaysia during the crisis. And today, I would like to share some of the secret that I learned from Sabah, not only from Japan. Next slide, please. A story from Miss Silao. I think it is worth to mention here to share how does the multi-sectoral partnerships, how the university academician work with the local people who are suffering from this 2015 Sabah earthquake, and how do they recover, how do they build back their life better. And indeed, you know, maybe some of you are aware, in June 2015, with this 30 seconds of shaking at the foot of Mount Kinabalu, it caused about 3 billion USD direct economic losses. Huge impact, even after 5 years, 6 years of the event. In fact, it's a 3 times economic losses than the 2014 flooding. And I would like to quickly share the story. And next slide, please, about the Maragang, how actually the people who are suffering because the mountain closed for about a year after 2015 Sabah earthquake. They lost their income, they don't have any financial support, but they recover, they find a way to survive. So they open up this Maragang Hill. Well, it's a hill, but it's higher than the Gunung Tahan, yeah. So maybe some of you have climbed this hill. It's opened up by local communities, these Masilau people, and they manage locally. And in fact, I'm proudly mentioned that they open even without a single cent by the governments. That's how actually the story evolved, and how the university, even before 2015 Sabah earthquake, have a strong relationships and invest into some of the science and technology into the area to understanding about these 120 years earthquakes. So let's move the earthquakes story into the context of the presentations today and the theme. Next slide, please. So far, a year after the earthquakes, they open up and they are making a profit, you know. So it's internally, locally managed. And through a mutual partnership with university, we help them to bring more technology, put it the early warning, so they can learn, they can improve themselves, how they can live with this disaster. So this is something that I can share today. And the next slides, you can see that they a lot of investments, of course, coming from Japan, coming from Germany, to help the local communities to accept the certain risks in this particular area, and recover and perhaps strengthen their local resilience, not only the economic per se, but also the social aspect. In the next slides, you see some of the, I think it's, well, within 1.5 minutes, I would like to mention about the concept that we promote in terms of the topic of today, the partnerships, the concept of transdisciplinary approach. I'm not going to go in detail, but we, together with Japanese partner, we explore the local practice of these international principles, and how actually this TDA, transdisciplinary approach, can be locally adapted and adopted. So we publish some articles for those who are interested. In the next slides, there's also some other parameters, and for those who in the decision-making support system, you can explore even more this concept, how a different disciplinary, different phases, different interests come together in the same interest to look into these so-called innovative means, yeah, how actually they are making holistic and transformative solutions possible. I'm going to go in the last part of the presentation. In this short period of time, I would like to share 5 strategies to build back better, learning from this 120 years experience of how the local people adapting these disaster and crisis in this particular area. Next slides, please. You see this 5 model we developed, and we looking for some local partners to expand this concept into the other COVID affected area. Perhaps those who are interested to know more about that, module 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with a different terminology, definition, practical solutions. We wish to share some of these strategies and translate some of these principles into practical. And I wish that today, the impact even larger. And for the next slides, I would like to share 3 quick secret recipe, or at least tips for us to come together and look for a better solutions, particularly to see how much basically the governments pump into the recovery fund, and how actually our non-profit organization can partially or at least tap some of the fund. So of course, I'm not going to go in detail, but at least I think it's worth to explore the science, technology, and innovation. That could be one thing. And to rejuvenate our cities and societies is require a multi and transdisciplinary approach. And I'm hereby to close my session by sharing the last notes, the statements from the United Nations about the warm-up, a great reminder by this United Nations about the upcoming or future risks that we are facing. With that, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamarul, for your presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have now arrived at the Q&A segment of our session. Due to previous delays, we probably have time for perhaps one to 3 questions. So, without further ado, I'll just read one of the questions posted on the Q&A tab. So, how can we ensure, this is for all panelists, yes? How can we ensure the government are responsive enough to ensure sustainability of CSOs' efforts? For example, eligible beneficiary excluded from social protection schemes, persons with disabilities not consulted, welfare of undocumented children, and such.
Shall I address this first before Dr. Kamarul? Yeah.
You can go.
Okay. Yeah. I'll shoot straight to it, yeah, because I think we don't have a seat at the table. So I think one is we got to learn to bring our own chairs, stools, and benches to wherever it is and start having conversations. Because if we wait to be invited to talk about the issues, we don't seem to be invited. We only hear about it after it has happened, which is a bit too late. So I think one is we can use the media. The media is a very, very strong tool. And getting the media together collectively raising our voices very, very loudly, I think there must be a stir, there must be a buzz, because NPOs, non-profit organizations, and CSOs have been on the sidetrack, and only used as and when needed, or called upon as and when needed. So I think now for the last 18 months, we have proven that we were playing a very significant role, and we need to be heard. Right, to be able to assist the nation, the country, the economy, everything better. So therefore, I think we all start to first, like what I put into the chat box, if only we can collectively bring like-minded people together to start the ball rolling, I think that will be a great big first step.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ulia. Another concern raised by one of the audience members, so collaboration may be the solution, but many CSOs have their own agenda to excel and take the major piece of resources. So I guess a question that we could build from that is, what kind of solutions or approaches can you, as expert matters in this field, propose to sort of ameliorate this practice, this somewhat toxic practice, I would say?
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Alia. Yeah, well, of course, I think, Alia, well, the solutions they are looking for, perhaps one solutions may not fit for all. So we have to locally adapt and understand the local behavior, and perhaps investing into the local actors, or I put it here, a local champion. And I've seen some of the project in the past is simply stop, or there's no continuity because of there's no local champion. So we have seen a lot of investments come into the poverty sections, but at the end, after a certain project, and there's no continuity. So we have to invest into the human capital, especially the young generation, and second, perhaps increase the funding for the capacity buildings. So these capacity buildings not just about a training anymore. And in the university side, I think I've seen a significant shift of the academician at the moment, how they actually translate some of the research into practice. So please find some academician and scientists and make use some of the data or evidence base into the decision-making process. So that could be some of the tips or additional inputs, Alia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kamarul. Just perhaps we have time for just one more question. And again, this is open to any of the panelists. So the sustainability of nonprofits, require diversification of funding strategies, resources, and talent management. Given the increasing intersection of areas of work, how could nonprofits reduce duplication and increase maximization of resources and funding? So maybe Dr. Olia can perhaps tackle this question.
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, obviously, but a very, very difficult one, because we're actually talking about increasing your funding at this moment when the funds are not getting any bigger, right? So the question is now, how do you get the funds that you want to get? So being innovative, I think Dr. Kamarul's keywords there just now, I'm going to pick those up. Pinjam, yeah, Dr. Kamarul. So being innovative and thinking out of the box, trying to do something different, like I mentioned in my slides. I mentioned in all my trainings which I do for CSO in Asia Pac, I keep saying, do not go back to the same old way of doing fundraising or trying to get funds, because we have a large pool of funds out there. But the question is now, how do we attract these funds towards us? So what do we need to do? These are the things that, like I said, we can actually collectively, the people that you are talking about, when you talked about, your question was something about resources and the limited resources. If similar charitable organizations or non-profits were to gang up together to raise funds, a large amount of funds, which will be distributed over 5 charities, more people will be supportive, and hats off, because I'm going to leave those behind who are the me-my type of charities, who do not want to come and play along with the rest, who do not want to be team players, but rather want to be solo, stand-alone NGOs. That's fine. I don't think we want to bother about them, because like you mentioned, someone mentioned just now saying that there are people with their own agendas. Let the people with their own agendas be with their own agendas. I would rather concentrate on those who want to collaborate. I'm not going to worry about those who want to have their own agendas. So that's my 2 cents worth, Alia. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kamarul, if you want to add just before we end, because
just one statement. I think we have to be more creative to create the local demands. That's the way to attract a big funder. That's what I learned from Japanese, Taiwanese, and also my 5 years in Europe. Alia, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I guess a key takeaway from this is that, the session sort of highlighted that CSO/nonprofit sustainability really does in this day rely on innovation, dynamicism, and moving away from orthodox ways and being more adaptive. So on that note, I apologize for the previous hiccup, but I hope that everyone goes away with more insight and knowledge on this topic and shares it with relevant networks and people. So thank you again to our esteemed speakers and attendees and event organizers for your time and participation today. Back to you, Ms. Rauda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alia. It was incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, the session moderated by Alia earlier concludes our conference for today. But before we bid adieu, I'd like to assist all of you to go to the last session for today, which is a closing speech by one of our board of trustees, Sophia and Sujatra. So if all of you can please make your way to the last session via the Hubilo feature interface on your profile, and I will meet you there.